Ad hoc committee in Parliament concludes for the day following the testimony of the head of crime intelligence to be Sani Khumalo, who has been testifying and has said a number of shocking things, including the fact that they believe that in Gauteng there are highly trained combat of the SAPS that are moonlighting for the cartels. He's also indicated to this committee that almost the whole of the SAPS in Gauteng works for the cartels. And of course, the question then is what action is going to be taken against some of these SAPS members, especially if it is established that they do work for these cartels. He's also faced a number of questions around Paul O'Sullivan and whether or not the police consider him as a person of interest and what action they have taken so far to go after him following allegations that have been made against him. So let's reflect a little bit from what happened in Parliament today. This crime intelligence head, Lieutenant General Sani Khumalo, testifying at this ad hoc committee investigating allegations of corruption and interference in the criminal justice system. He's told the committee that the police minister, Senzo Mchunu, disbanded the political killings task team without any consideration for ongoing investigation, active court proceedings, or adherence to established legal requirements. He says the Deputy National Commissioner, Shadrack Sibia, actually expected him to give reasons for the disbandment of the PKTT, even though it wasn't his decision.
I received then the directive from the Deputy National Commissioner on the 17th that is having a list of issues that I need to include in the preliminary report. I've analyzed some, but basically they are all talking to the confliction of the disbandment directive from the Deputy National Commissioner's office now with the actions that he says I must take. I was supposed to give the summary of the key considerations that resulted in the decision to disband the PKTT. I did not disband the PKTT, but I'm expected to give the reasons by the DNC. And then secondly, also on the next page, I was expected to do the analysis of the PKTT's effectiveness and impact on crime reduction.
He also addressed claims that the police entered into a settlement with Ket Matlala.
The allegations that there was any settlement agreement entered to with Matlala are false because the firearms were not back yet. They were still with our ballistic experts. And then we were continuing with our plan as it was planned. But then the matter then did not continue at court based on Mr. Matlala's withdrawal.
He told the committee that there are senior police officers who actually work closely with criminal syndicates.
What makes it more difficult these days, especially within SABC, it's because there are syndicate members that are within our ranks. Now, you cannot, or let me say, there are senior officers that are in close proximity of the syndicate members that we have to work with. I am a living example of that. A general sending me a WhatsApp message, greetings, I greet back, and then we talk, and then somewhere along the line, when we come across the cell phone of a particular target of our operation, you find that screenshot of yours when you were discussing or whatever with that general.
That is the head of crime intelligence, Dumisani Khumalo, testifying in Parliament earlier today. The ad hoc committee's proceedings resume tomorrow. You can send us a WhatsApp voice note right now to respond to what has come out so far out of the testimony of the head of crime intelligence, or you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. What do you make of what he has told Parliament so far, especially the fact that they believe, right, as crime intelligence, that most of or almost all of the SAPS members in Gauteng are somehow in cahoots with these criminal cartels? What are your thoughts on that? Send us a WhatsApp voice note or send us a tweet. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. The MK party is calling for a Hawks investigation into allegations that Minister of Agriculture John Steenhuisen and newly appointed Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment Willie Aucamp are involved in the commercial trading of lion bones. Aucamp replaced long-standing DA member Dion George last year. George announced his resignation earlier today, citing his removal to be due to his hardline stance against the wildlife breeding and hunting industry. However, Steenhuisen maintained that George was removed for poor performance in his portfolio. The MK party says these allegations raise grave concerns relating to corruption, abuse, political influence, and they go against ethical governance and environmental responsibility. Nhlamulo, join us now on the line to have Nhlamulo Ndhlela, who's the national spokesperson for the MK party. Nhlamulo, thanks for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening to yourself and good evening to viewers.
So who exactly are you calling for the Hawks to investigate, and what exactly are the issues here that you're raising?
Well, I'm sure you'll have seen in our statement that we're calling for the investigation and prosecution, if based on the facts that we've seen and the evidence that was presented by Dr. Dion George, for that, his name being Mr. John Steenhuisen and the other character being Willie Aucamp, and both being ministers who clearly have been colluding here based on the evidence that was presented to facilitate a gateway for the industry of hunters and poachers to hunt caged lions for purposes of their bones and for them to be traded illicitly. We know that Mr. Steenhuisen has been traveling between South Africa and Vietnam and in Asia, signing treaties and signing agreements that would in effect facilitate these kind of transactions. Now, we're saying that the DA has always painted itself as a clean party, a party that's led by good governance and that is not morally corrupt. But what we've come to realize now is that the DA leadership are actually morally corrupt. The fact that they're stating that John Steenhuisen has been captured, by the ANC, that should just tell you that the ministers that serve us are no longer there to serve the will of the people. They are there to facilitate transactions for themselves. And that's basically what it is. So we're going to call on the police to investigate this matter because we know that this is ethically incorrect. It's not supposed to be such a situation. I mean, if you look at what's happening with lions, we had 200,000 lions about 10 years ago. And if you look at the statistics right now, they're talking about 20,000 lions. We can't be having animals such as these precious, animals being poached the way that they are for personal, financial, and commercial gain, by people that we're supposed to entrust to protect the country, to protect our environment, and to protect the wildlife in this country. But instead, they're trading in abalone and wildlife. So the DA is led by morally corrupt leaders. They are led by corrupt individuals who then want to masquerade here as leaders of a clean party. They're the worst party in actual fact, especially in light of the fact that there's these revelations coming from one of their own.
Okay, just for clarity there, when you speak about the decline in some of these wildlife, like the lions, are you suggesting that that has happened during the time when the DA has been in charge of these portfolios?
Well, we're not saying that that's necessarily the case, and that's part of the investigation. But what we're pointing out here is that, there's been an extinction and the lions are extinct. And what then the DA goes and does is goes and supports the further, slaughtering and killing, and cowardly so, because remember what they do is they take these lions, they cage them, and shoot and kill them, and then use their bones to trade them illicitly. I mean, instead of these people focusing on agriculture in ensuring that they bring about an end to food security, these people are more focused on, what seems to be elite sports, where they go and kill our animals for their own personal trade. It's also interesting that, let's not forget that the same DA was against rhino poaching. They were against rhino poaching. But today, they then lead, through their leader, John Steenhuisen, in wanting to kill and poach our lions, caged cowardly and killed for their bones, for them to be traded with in countries in Asia, specifically Vietnam.
So what's when you lay? I mean, I understand that you are going to go to the South African Police Service. There's issues you're raising with John Steenhuisen's spouse. I'll get to that in a moment. But when you are calling for the Hawks to investigate, what's the basis, though? Are you mostly relying on the information that's been provided by Dion George, or do you have something somehow solid, some information that the Hawks can pick up from?
Well, you'll see also in our statement that we cite the fact that there is a public protector's report, a complaint that was submitted by the same, leader within the DA.
So it's still so it's an allegation, not so much a report.
No, these are going to be allegations, and the only conclusive outcome would be that of the Hawks, obviously having findings on this. But we cannot ignore it, and we cannot ignore the fact that one of their own leaders, whilst he was a minister, made a submission, a form of a complaint against his own, to the public protector, and all the details in there, which are very gory if you look into them. And you'll find that indeed there is a case to be heard, and actually a case to be investigated here, and something this is very serious that we cannot ignore, and people need to be held accountable here. So we're saying that should be the first point of where it starts, and we understand that naturally, being the DA that like to hide things, there was clearly a private deal between Steenhuisen and Willie Aucamp, so that he can then obviously come in, because it seems like that minister, or being their colleague, then didn't want to facilitate any engagements with the industry that keeps poaching these lions, that Willie Aucamp would be, the better devil for Steenhuisen, for them to do this illicit trade and these backhanded transactions. So again, if you look at Steenhuisen's financial situation based on what's being said, it's clear that the man is desperate for money. He'll look for any loophole and any opportunity and any deal that he can strike to make some sort of pennies for himself. But this is what it is. I mean, these are people that we know now are corrupt. The DA is corrupt. The DA must never mislead South Africans ever again and say they're not corrupt. They are corrupt. In actual fact, the fact that they've hidden this corruption for this long is very scary. But now it's coming out. And it's about time that we pursue every angle to expose the illicit trade, the corruption, the morally corrupt DA.
Okay, so you still want the Hawks to obviously investigate that so that you can say that conclusively. And of course, Dion George did say that John Steenhuisen seems to have some financial vulnerabilities. So what's the next step now? Are you going to submit some to the Joint Committee on Ethics in Parliament, or has that already been done? And what issues have you raised specifically with Steenhuisen's spouse? Because I see your statement also makes mention of that.
Well, there are also allegations that we've picked up. Clearly, there's financial troubles in the Steenhuisen household, because one of the things that we picked up, which are again allegations, and we're looking into it, is that there's a case that's registered with the Cape Town police station where it said that she had allegedly stole sunglasses, from a waterfront sunglasses hut store, and successfully so until the following day when it was actually discovered. And there's an ongoing case. Now, we are obviously looking into that, but we'll ensure that we expose that, because from what we're hearing, there seems to be attempts to try and shove that under the carpet. But we're not going to allow that. We're going to expose these people and demonstrate and show to South Africans that they cannot be trusted, that this DA, this GNU is captured. This GNU is led by people who are morally corrupt, whose interests are focused on only their stomachs.
Okay, so is that the case that you're going to open tomorrow against the spouse of John Steenhuisen?
No, I was saying to you that there's a case that we understand is ongoing.
Okay.
Where it seems that he was found and caught from the alleged information that we received, caught for having stolen sunglasses. So we're going to be looking into that. And because this has clearly been hidden, why has it been hidden from the public? I mean, remember, you'll recall at one point there was a minister of the former liberation movement, who was a minister of state security, whose wife, by the way, was found to be trading in drugs. And he was a minister of state security. So it's clear, you know, that we're led by thugs here. We're led by a GNU that represents thugs, and that when it comes to how they appoint their leaders, they really don't take these kind of things into account. You know, now we're finding that there's alleged kleptomaniacs who now steal sunglasses as wives. So we're saying that that case that's been raised station will be looked into, and we're going to be taking it seriously and expose it to South Africa and say that this household and this leadership clearly is led by people who are thugs and thieves.
All right, Nhlamulo Ndhlela, let me thank you for making time for us. He speaks on behalf of the MK party. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. The Democratic Alliance has criticized the lack of action against senior public officials flagged for suspected undeclared income or hidden assets. The party has called for the Minister of Public Service and Administration, Mzamo Buthelezi, to account for the slow progress. Yet the Department of Public Service and Administration has reported a surge in lifestyle audit compliance, with 9,000 senior officials audited in the last year. Of the 172 cases flagged for further investigation, only 17 of the flagged cases have been finalized. Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi joins us now via Zoom. Is the Minister of Public Service and Administration. Minister, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and to your viewers, and thanks for giving us an opportunity to account to the citizens of this country on this very important matter.
So let's start with the lifestyle audits and the cases that have been flagged and those that have been referred for these internal investigation. What exactly have you picked up? What are these public officials doing? Are they hiding assets? Are they having some salaries and income coming that hasn't been declared?
Thank you. Maybe before I just come to that, I think it's important that we first outline the process so that we understand exactly where we are, and we deal with the speculation that we are moving with the snail's pace as far as addressing these matters. Lifestyle audit is one of the mechanisms that the government has adopted. It's decentralized in its operation and processes, where we try to deal with unethical conduct and acts of corruption. So every senior manager across departments, meaning national and provincially, they are expected to declare as to what do they owe, do they own rather.
Yeah.
So once they have done that through the e-disclosure process, because there are 3 processes involved here, then the ethical officers now will compare what those individuals have submitted. Remember also that those that are in the supply chain management, all of them, regardless of their positions, are subjected to this process. So when therefore they have declared to say this is what I have, then ethical officers will go through that and compare whatever information that is there with other external sources. Like, for example, if you have declared that we've got so many cars, they will check that with the transport system to see whether that is the case. In relation to houses, they will consult the deeds office, and also in relation to businesses, because some people will not declare the fact that they've got businesses, they will also do the same. So when therefore there are some flags that are actually cited in that process, those matters therefore would be referred for further investigation. What is very important for people of South Africa to know and understand is that, not as you have alluded to the fact that 8,982 lifestyle audits were done and only 172 were flagged. That does not mean that our processes are inefficient or ineffective, because most of the cases here will be the potential conflict of interest. For example, if Mzamo has like 3 cars registered in his name, but he has one that is no longer working, maybe for 20 years, lying there in the garage, but he did not deregister that car, it will still show. And you find that those specific individuals, therefore, may not necessarily declare them, because in their mind, they think that that car is no longer in use, so there is no need to do such. So when that is flagged, therefore, ethical officers will investigate, and then when they find such activities, then in case where there are actual red lights, then they will therefore refer that for further auditing now, and if there is prima facie evidence, then those individuals will be actually subjected to the legal process, whether we open court cases or we refer some to the investigating unity if that capacity is not within government, yes.
So why is the cases not being referred to the Hawks or the SIU already? Do you have to look at internal processes first, and what does that entail?
We have to first look at internal processes and also make sure that all these cases that gets referred, there is prima facie evidence. For an example, you cannot say if Mzamo, as an example, is saying it does not have a business, but 15 years down the line, he registered a business and it didn't work and it's lying idle, they're no longer actually operating. Therefore, you can't refer those things to the SIU. You must first satisfy yourself that indeed the business is operating and there is evidence to that. When the person did not declare, then you refer such. There are cases that have been referred to the SIU. But what is very important also is that we do have investigators internally. Once we've exhausted our internal process and we found that there are complicated cases where they need specialized actually expertise, those therefore we refer to the SIU. Again, there is also a challenge here of financial resources that department do not have that capacity to do so. And to refer one case, for example, to the SIU, it may take 4 months to conclude it, and also you may pay more or less 35,000 depending on the depth of the matters that we are dealing with. So where we are now, we are at a point where there are red flags. Some of them have been cleared, but those that have not been cleared, there are still internal investigations to make sure that there's prima facie evidence. Then if there's such, we will refer to them.
Yeah, I saw the Black Lawyers Association calling on you as ministers to also lead by example. Are you joining in as these lifestyle audits are being done to the members of the public service, or is there a separate process for you guys as members of cabinet?
There is a separate process for us as members of cabinet, which also is one thing that actually show how much even the president of this country, President Ramaphosa, is committed to deal with corruption. All of us as members of executive are subjected. As we speak, we are in that process to be audited. We are submitting information to be audited and to see to it that we are living within our means. So no one is exempted. We are leading by example, and we are going to make sure that we account and we are transparent in this regard.
All right. Inkosi Mzamo Buthelezi, thank you so much for making time for us. Let's move to this now. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado is set to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House today to discuss her country's future, just weeks after the U.S. captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in a bold military operation. This meeting comes as Venezuela's leadership remains uncertain, with the Trump administration signaling its willingness to work with acting President Dulce Rodriguez, who served as Maduro's vice president. Machado, who's a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, has been a key figure in Venezuela's opposition. We're joined now by a journalist who's live to us from Venezuela, who is joining us on the line to have a conversation about where things are. And I really have to start with what the mood is on the ground in Venezuela. What are people saying? Are they happy with this meeting between the opposition leader and President Trump?
Yes, thank you. First of all, people is happy because the capture of Maduro in New York That's the first thing. But nobody can do a celebration because there is an order to put in jail to everybody who has a celebration, or even if they have a message in the WhatsApp account. On the other hand, the people was waiting for this meeting between Maria Corina Machado and Donald Trump because the opposition, the democratic opposition of Venezuela, needs a place on the table. In this moment, there is a deal between Donald Trump and Delcy Rodriguez to a transition to the democracy, but with a lot of controls about the oil industries. That's really important because it's the first time in my generation that we are going to see where is the money of the oil. With this tutelage, with this control of the sale of the oil. But the opposition need to be part of the table, and this is the key of the meeting in the White House.
And Louis, I mean, there have been questions raised about whether or not Donald Trump will somehow give the green light for this opposition leader to return to Venezuela and somehow then lead Venezuelans. What is the mood on the ground? Like, is that still the case? Because the U.S. president, when he held a press briefing after Maduro was kidnapped, he indicated that he doesn't think that this opposition leader would actually be a leader that gets the respect of Venezuelans.
Yes, but first of all, Nicolas Maduro was not a legitimate president. He stole the election. And in this part is difficult because he was accused by narco traffic, and the accusation is real. He has connections with the cartel of Sinaloa in Mexico and other cartels in Latin America. So this is a fair trial in the United States, and they need to wait the process. This process is really important to everybody in Latin America because it's the end of a cycle of narco traffic from the state. That's a difference between Venezuela and other countries. On the other hand, Donald Trump doesn't talk about Maria Corina Machado like the leader who controls the country in this moment, because she has not the control of the institutions. The institutions are part of the dictatorship, and the dictatorship is in the hand of Delcy Rodriguez. So she has the control of the militaries, of the repression of the political prisoner, that we have 1,000 political prisoners. So now, with the pressure of the United States, she needs to dismantle this system, and she is under pressure, but it's a good pressure to become the democracy.
All right. Louis Carlos Diaz, Venezuelan journalist and human rights defender, thank you so much for making time for us. And thanks to you for watching the Thursday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.